Good evening, America. Happy Wednesday. In fact, it's going to be a very happy Wednesday for the members of the military. I'm going to explain that in a second. But first, let me get rid of the formalities here and welcome you to the latest edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from the nation's capital here in Washington, D.C. Just a few minutes ago, the United States House of Representatives passed the National Defense Authorization Act, the largest ever allotment of money, authorization of money to the Pentagon, now called the War Department, a vote of confidence to what Pete Hegseth, the War Secretary, is now doing over $900 billion for the fighting men and women of our great armed services, including a long overdue but much appreciated 4% pay raise. Now, it's still got to get through the Senate, but all signs are that it will fare well there as well. That is a big thing. It just happened 3 minutes ago, and one of the members whose vote pushed it over the line, Congressman Glenn Grothman, is going to join us in a second. But first, some other news, starting with a case of possible judicial overreach with a federal judge earlier today blocking President Trump's deployment of the California National Guard to Los Angeles. You're like, well, wait a second. Haven't the court said the president can do this? Well, they do. And then another judge says, no, you can't. And yeah, you're right. He's a Democrat judge. U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer, a Clinton appointee and the brother of the former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, ruled that Trump illegally kept about 100 troops deployed in Los Angeles months after sending troops amid violent protests against U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents this summer. Breyer paused his ruling until Monday to give the Justice Department time to, appeal. You know how this game goes now. Judge rules, government appeals, appellate court or Supreme Court overturns, and they go right back and wash, rinse, repeat again. Now, moving to the topic of Venezuela, President Trump said he would be ratcheting up the pressure, and today he did. The United States Navy today seized an oil tanker off the coast of that country amid ongoing strikes on suspected drug cartels in Washington. A Washington-driven pressure campaign, to encourage Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down. By the way, there are some signs that there's some negotiating going on to maybe get him out of power. See how that goes. Remember, President Trump has previously stated that Maduro's days are numbered, but has not announced plans for regime change. And finally, some welcome news for those in the housing market. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday cut interest rates for a third straight month in a 9-3 vote. Now, it wasn't unanimous. That's a little unusual, but we're keeping an eye on that. The reduced rate is the lowest it has been in nearly 3 years, but the FOMC, that's the committee that does the mortgage and interest rates, signaled in a statement that it may keep its rate unchanged in the coming months. I bet you President Trump will be yelling at the Fed chairman once again when that becomes known. All right, we can turn right away to my amazing co-host Amanda Head, who spends her days at the White House. She probably has a good feel what President Trump might say if there's not another rate cut. What do you think?
I have a feeling it's going to sound a lot like what he did before, which is not great for them. Yeah. All right. So, John, the Trump gold cards are officially here, with the president announcing on Truth Social that the live site trumpcard.com is officially open for business. He wrote, the United States government's Trump Gold Card is here today, a direct path to citizenship for all qualified and vetted people. So exciting. Our great American companies can finally keep their invaluable talent. Now, the website says that for a $15,000 DHS processing fee, and of course, after background approval and a contribution of $1 million, a person can receive U.S. residency in record time with the Trump Gold Card. It is another stream of income that President Trump is looking to use to help cut the debt as well as boost the economy. All right, turning now to Elon Musk. He gave some revealing answers in an interview today with Katie Miller, the wife of Stephen Miller, on her podcast. And one of those answers was about if Doge was ultimately successful. Take a look.
Do you think you were successful?
We're a little bit successful. We were somewhat successful. For example, there was probably 100, maybe $200 billion worth of zombie payments per year, which simply by enforcing that there be a payment code and an explanation for the payment, that the payment would not go out. There are just, call it 2 or 3% of government payments that go out that really should not be going out. And it's actually quite hard to stop.
John, there's been a lot of talk surrounding Elon Musk's departure when it happened, which was that, as a private sector person, someone who is used to getting things done in record time to record levels of efficiency, he comes to the federal government and like a lot of people you see come here from the private sector, they just grow so unbelievably frustrated that, I say, to heck with it.
Did you get something done? Kinda. That was the answer.
Yeah, kinda, exactly.
That's Washington, kinda. But you know, a guy gets something done all the time. He's also our first guest tonight, Congressman Glenn Grothman from my former home state of Wisconsin. Congressman Grothman, great to have you on the show today.
Glad to be on the show and glad to be done with the Defense Authorization Bill.
That is a big moment. Tell us a little bit about what our Pentagon and our War Department gets out of this, including the great brave men and women that wear that uniform.
I think the big things we were looking for is we want to make sure that they're not fighting the last war. And I think they're moving steps in the direction. We learn a lot in the Russian-Ukraine war. We learned that a lot of traditional armaments are not the way the next war is going to be fought. The thing that I was looking more than anything, though, is are we seeing a reduction in non-uniformed personnel? You know, when Donald Trump took over, a lot of people weren't aware that 760,000 of employees in the Department of Defense were not wearing a uniform. You know, people sitting in front of a computer screen. I believe right now we've reduced that number by 18 or 19%. I was able to talk to some of the people in the Pentagon. Their goal is to reduce that figure further. You just got done talking to Elon Musk. I think one of the things that DOGE exposed is that there are a lot of federal employees who maybe aren't working that hard. And I think we made a big step in the right direction in Donald Trump's first year as far as reducing non-uniform personnel. And I think we have commitments in the second year. There's going to be a further reduction, which we have to have. I want to remind your listeners, we're borrowing 26% of our budget. We cannot keep going this way. And it appears as though the Department of Defense is going to step up and, like some of the other departments, begin to lay off some employees who are really not necessary in today's highly technical world.
Yeah.
Amazing.
How much does that equate to in savings for the American people?
Well, I think if you let's say right now we've gotten rid of, say 30,000 employees, that would be about $30 billion in savings per year, which is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, it sure is. Pretty remarkable. All right, there's a lot of other things at foot. This is going to be a very busy December in Washington. The expanded Obamacare subsidies, which really were an insurance prop-up program from the COVID era, they're expiring. Republicans are holding a line, but they're not just going to end the subsidies or allow them to expire like Democrats set them to expire. You've got an alternative to put in front of the American people. Tell us about it.
It's not a whole bill right now. It's parts of a variety of bills, things like transparency required, extended use of HSAs throughout small business, that we feel collectively, not just this year, but as they become more and more part of our healthcare system, will reduce our healthcare costs. You know, we spend so much more on healthcare than other countries do. And of course, it permeates not only the Obamacare and the part of the population that is dependent on that. It affects any business insurance. It affects people who are out there on their own. So the key thing is to reduce expenditures that way. I'm on a subcommittee that held a hearing, particularly today, on the use of technology to reduce the amount of overall costs, the amount of money, and you can just see it when you go into a hospital, go into a clinic, the amount of money that's going into employees who are involved in medicine themselves is just shocking. And we believe also by setting up more consortiums so you can take economies of scale, take advantage of things like on-site clinics. I think you're going to see more of that in the future, which is one of the things that the private sector does to reduce their costs. You know, right now, we're up to around $14,000 a year per American in healthcare costs. I mean, think about that, $14,000 a year per person. That's just unsustainable.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and I know one of the important points you brought up is the fact that we spend more per person in this country on healthcare than our peer, twice as much as our peer nations. We're not healthier. Where is that money going? Is it just completely wasted?
Well, like I said, I think there's a lot of money lost in fraud. People uh, using a social security number, somebody else's social security number. The medical system grabs that, submits billing, gets money that way. But I think a lot of it is there's just too much overutilization in the United States. I think the incentives are always to do one more test, sadly, even sometimes one more surgery. And we heard testimony about that today. But I think we have to be a lot more aggressive in looking around the country and saying, if one state is spending way less than another state, why is that? And what can we do about having that many less tests, that many less surgeries compared to other countries? And of course, we're not healthy, which is another big problem. I think Bobby Kennedy is working on that. And I look forward to our diet changing a little bit. I think some junk food that they sell in America isn't even available in Europe. And that's another thing that will, I think, reduce costs overall.
The president's also done something pretty big, and it'll certainly start to take effect next year, and that is reduce the price of prescription drugs to Americans, things like Ozempic or in vitro fertilization and other things. These are big historic changes that haven't been changed in years, or prices that haven't been gone down in years. Americans will start feeling that in the first quarter of next year. What do you think the reaction is to be when things like no tax on tips, lower drug prices, lower IVF costs suddenly hit their wallet?
And drug prices, let's say what was the problem. I think the drug companies give way too many campaign contributions to people in Congress. I think as the result, Congress was not willing to go after the pharmaceutical industry like they should have. Donald Trump, he's supported by people other than the pharmaceutical industry, and that's why he was able to crack down on this. And your drugs are going to cost a lot less a year from now. And hopefully, when that comes about, all the listeners will know who to thank for that. Donald John Trump.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sir, we were talking earlier about the Trump gold cards, and he also has these Trump accounts where babies born between now and 2028 get $1,000. This is really a great jump start that's going to benefit these babies and kids and ultimately adults.
Well, let's look at a couple things. First of all, we want to make sure the next generation is capable of taking care of itself. And we want to make sure we have enough children in the next generation. We don't want to wind up like China or sadly Korea or Japan, in which we don't have enough kids. So I think hopefully one step in the right direction. And the biggest problem is the church has got to do a better job of educating people why they should have kids. But I think this will be a first step towards making sure we have a sizable next generation here. And that's what I like about it. You don't want it to be set up in a way and that we are encouraging the wrong people to have children. But I think overall, the step is in the right direction. And when we talk about overall looking at people's economic situation a year from now compared to today, you're 100% right. When these tax cuts kick in, I think it's going to result in more discretionary dollars for people. And as they spend more discretionary dollars, that further gins up the economy.
Yeah, I think that's probably right over the horizon. Sir, before I let you go, you have been such a great steward of oversight. And then when you find a problem, trying to find a solution. And recently the House, with bipartisan support, passed a bill that gives taxpayers more rights and makes the IRS more accountable to the taxpayer. Tell us a little bit about this. It's a big deal.
Well, right. Right now, one of the problems we had, it was too easy to penalize taxpayers. You didn't have to work your way up very high up in the food chain for a rogue IRS agent or an over-aggressive IRS agent to put penalties on the individual taxpayer. We're going back to the way things were before President Trump, in which you have to deal with an IRS agent who's a little more experienced, so individual agents can't willy-nilly put penalties on the taxpayer out there. It's something that tax-paying groups have wanted. It's something the Small Business Administration wanted. If you think you have tax problems out there, wait till you own your own business. Then you really have tax problems. So this is something that the small business organizations wanted as well, and we think it'll reduce out of control penalties and interest that fall on the American taxpayer and particularly the small business taxpayer.
Yeah, what a great idea. And making anyone who makes the IRS a little more accountable is going to be greatly thanked by the American people. Congressman, it's always a great honor to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us today. Great to have you on.
Thank you much.
All right, folks. I know politics sometimes is boring to some people, but it's never boring when our next guest is talking about it. He is one of the greatest pollsters in America. He also makes politics fun. Our good friend, Rich Baris, up next after these messages.
What if the medicine that helped save millions during the pandemic was made mostly in China? It's true. About 58% of the world's ivermectin supply comes from China and 75% from Asia overall, but not the wellness companies. Introducing American-made ivermectin, safe, trusted, and produced right here in the United States. Ivermectin has been prescribed globally for more than 30 years and even earned the Nobel Prize in Medicine for its proven ability to eliminate parasites and support overall health. And new research also points to potential benefits for skin, immune, and cancer support. Now, most pharmacies charge $5 a tablet, but the wellness company is offering a higher 18 milligram dose for just over $3 each. You're going to get a 6-month supply designed for 4 21-day cleanse cycles, all at an unbeatable price. Support American medicine, not China's supply chain. Get your U.S.-made ivermectin today at twc.health/justnews and use the code JUSTNEWS to save $30 off plus free shipping.